Well, good morning, everyone. It's really lovely to be here. I've never been to Vancouver, and yeah, thank you, David, for inviting us. So this morning, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the body field, which perhaps it's a bit of a pun, but we say it's the greatest discovery since DNA, or it's one of the greatest unseen discoveries that pretty much nobody knows about. And I'm going to a little bit introduce what both Professor Pollock and also Dr. Jack Cruz are doing as well. So I'll try and bring a little bit of the whole theme of quantum biology into the talk. So I'll just start with a little bit of history, so some of this makes some sense. I'll just get the technology bit to work. So as I was just introduced, my name's Harry Massey. I was executive producer of the Living Matrix and also founded the company Ness Health, which makes health diagnostic or health analysis systems, and we also worked out a way of how to get people better. I'm going to tell you a bit about the story about how we map the human body field, and also, but I'll just start with my own story. So today I'm 39. When I was 21, I ended up with chronic fatigue syndrome, and I had a particularly bad chronic fatigue syndrome. I was basically bedridden. I was bedridden for about 5 or 6 years, and I was very, very ill for about 10 years. And I couldn't tell you how many different things I tried. Obviously I went for the first 2-3 years through the traditional medical system and had all sorts of bits of things jabbed in me and all sorts of fun things like that. Then I started getting into the nutrition routes and some of the naturopathic things. And I followed like Gerson therapy for a year and a half, doing coffee enemas every day and drinking tons of juices. But I couldn't maintain the energy to do any of these things, and they were actually more draining to me at the time. So I didn't understand that at the time. I also tried homeopathy. I did loads of ozone therapy. I was on nutrition IV drips. Pretty much you name it, I probably tried it in that 8-9 year period. And I was so sick. I was so sick. I had this really strange, peculiar idea. So I was too sick to travel to go and visit doctors or practitioners to help me. So I had this idea that if there was a way of getting yourself better from home, so you didn't have to go and travel, that would be a good thing. And it would be a good thing not just for myself, so I could get myself better, but also it would be great for other people. And that's where I had this seed of an idea to try and create a home wellness system. And I really had absolutely no idea how to do such a thing. I was extraordinarily sick and didn't have any money or energy, so it's completely unrealistic possibility. But often the completely unrealistic ends up happening. And so really from that, it sort of posed this question, which was how on earth can we get people well? How can we get them healthy? And perhaps beyond that, how can we get them to excel? The excel part is more of a recent interest because I've got healthy and I've seen lots of other people get healthy. How can we perform and do better in our lives? But that's a more recent thing. Now, this question, I don't know if people have posed questions and then the people and the answers and the resources just come to you, but that's exactly what happened to me. In that moment of crisis, the answers started appearing. I was very fortunate to be. There's a great alternative medicine doctor in England called Dr. Julian Kenyon. He was too expensive for me to see, but I was underneath one of his junior doctors, and my parents used to have to drive me off to go and see, and I was put on these drips and all this type of stuff. And once I was just lying back in having an IV drip, and the famous big doctor was wandering past. And I was 26 at the time. I was extremely feeble, and I was like, put my hand up like, Julian. He said, I don't know, he's wandering past with his clipboard, and he said, yeah, yes, or something like that. And I said, who's the most prominent energetic medicine researcher in the world? And he looked at me and said, well, it's this guy called Peter Fraser, and he's in Australia. And he said, well, why do you want to know? And I said, well, because I want to put information about energetic medicine research on the net, and I just want to put a collection of these researchers up there. And I was very fortunate, because I didn't, to be honest, really know that he had much interest in this field. But he was very gracious, and he gave me half an hour of his time, and his secretary booked me an appointment the next time I was there. And as he was, hundreds of dollars an hour, that was amazing for me, because money was not really a thing that I had when I was very, very ill. So I met him, and then he literally just gave me a fax number of Peter Fraser, because Peter didn't use the internet or the. I think he did use the telephone, but he didn't use email or anything like that. And I think I wrote a fax, dear Professor Peter Fraser, could you tell me something about quantum biology? I want to put it up on this website. And he just wrote back one line and said, I don't know why I'm sending you this. And he faxed through a paper he'd written on quantum biology. And, I had a degree in being really ill and economics. But I wasn't a scientist. I mean, I'm still not a scientist. So from that, from that, I read it. I really didn't know what it was. I didn't understand it at all. I uploaded it onto the site and sort of forgot about it in a way. And then about a year and a half later, I still had this sort of burning idea, but I didn't have the confidence to attempt to try and do anything about it. I still had this idea of creating a home wellness system, and anyway, I just rang him up again out of the blue, or maybe I wrote to him, and then he gave me his telephone number, and I rang him up, and I sort of said this idea. I was like, I think I know how we could do something like this, but I don't know how to get better. I don't know how you get other people better. But it's just a sort of, it's a punt really, because you just don't know, but you just have a feeling that there's something in it. And he agreed to come over from Australia, and I went to LA I quite like wearing colour sometimes. I was wearing a pink jumper in an open car, sports car, which worked. He quite liked that. I don't know why. Very unusual approach, but the unusual often works. And we spent 10 days together, and it all worked out. Now I better tell you who Peter is before this makes any sense. So Peter, back 45, 50 years ago now, he set up the first acupuncture. Well, a bit like how Boucher, I guess, is setting up the naturopathic college here for 15 years. Peter set up the first acupuncture college in Australia, and it was in Melbourne. He set up the first association of acupuncture in Australia. And he was definitely one of the first. He was one of the first Westerners to go into China. I mean, he could speak and read Chinese. Spoke to lots of Chinese medicine experts at the time. Translated all that information into English, and a lot of that information has been licensed to acupuncture schools in the States and elsewhere. And he was one of the premier people, one of the first people to do that before acupuncture is as popular as it is today. That became part of Melbourne University. But when it became part of Melbourne University, many of his peers sort of wanted to turn it into a sort of a chemical control system. Sticking the needle in here, it must be some endorphins or some sort of mechanistic mechanism that was doing it. And he was so sort of disgusted with what was happening, or how they were trying to change his courses and all that type of stuff. He left Melbourne University in a fit of rage or whatever, not very happy with what happened to him, and went off to the east coast of Australia. and basically just started doing his own private research. And he'd also got into, everyone familiar with the Vega machine? It's like a very old point probe type device. So he was one of the first people to get one of those when it came out. And he started doing matching experiments between Chinese meridians. But he started to notice that there was much more beyond the traditional meridian system, and he started mapping out that energy system. But more interestingly, the information that travels down those meridians. And so he started to do that for, goodness me, about 25, 30 years. I think it was about 25 years before I met him, 11 years ago today. Goodness me, where did I get to? Okay, yeah. So that was Peter. That was Peter. We got so we'll go back. We'll go back to LA. Anyway, so we had this lovely time together. But did any of this mean anything? I was still extraordinarily sick. I had got on an aeroplane and got to LA, which was just a massive thing to me. But I was so desperate at that point. It didn't really matter whether I was living or dead, really. So you might as well. It's okay to get on planes and do things, because you can be dead and depressed and unhappy in a bed. You can be dead on a plane. What does it matter? You might as well be trying to do something in the right direction. So we did that, and anyway he made me up. He made me up of what we today call an infoceutical. And I think it was an antidote to a group of flaviviruses, and I got this sort of great fever and a healing reaction, but it only lasted a couple of days rather than if you get the flu it lasts a week, so it's more of a healing reaction type mechanism. So I knew there was something in it, and it's not that I took this thing and I got better. It's just life isn't like that. To heal yourself definitely takes time. There's many layers, as you all know. But I knew there was something in what he was saying. So we basically started on this journey both to make this healing system, but also to map out more of what he called the human body field. I think one of the questions I asked him at the time is, well, when he came to me, he'd had this sort of rigorous other training, because after the acupuncture experience, he was talking in Qi and all that type of stuff. But he'd hooked up with a physicist from Paris, I think another oncologist in Australia, Julian Kenyon in England, the person who introduced us. And they were all talking to him. He's like, well, you can't talk in all this woo-woo language. You have to talk in the language of science and physics. So he embarked on learning all the physics. But when he talked to me in physics, I really didn't know what he was talking about, because if you start talking about the body field being in terms of magnetic monopoles and all these other types of things, it was again completely meaningless. So I said to him, well, we can't have that. We have to relate it to people and to the body and to what might make more sense. Otherwise, it's no good, really. It's not that it's no good, but if you can't communicate to a lot of people, it doesn't go anywhere. So one of the first questions that we asked at the time was, well, what on earth drives this? What on earth drives this body field? What creates it? And so the first concept was this idea of energetic drivers, which is what we're going to talk about today. I'm only on the first slide, so I reckon I'm just going to switch slides. So I might ruin the punchlines. All right, this is an interesting slide. So this slide is all about seeing the unseen. So have a look at the slide and see what you see or don't see. It's divided into three. The first bit, we've got a lovely person digging up graves. Then we have a representative of I guess Western medicine and the identification of biochemistry, and then what we can't see often is the body field. And history has really led us to give much more credibility to what we can see. And we go back a few hundred years ago, and probably back into thousands of years ago, people used to work out what was going on in physiology at the most basic level by, I mean, I don't think they were literally digging up graves, but digging up graves, looking at dead bodies, cutting up skeletons, pulling out the organs. That's some of where our first understanding of the body has come from. Hopefully we've gone a bit further since then. And after that, sort of after that, in much of this century, science has got a lot more sophisticated, a lot more credible with the advent of the microscope and many different types of microscope. But again, it's what we can see, and that's led to huge advances in biochemistry and genetics, and that's led to some incredible solutions for acute conditions. And I'm sure all of us agree, if we break a leg or if we get meningitis, we do want to be rushed off to hospital and have the best that Western medicine can give us. But we're obviously, all of us in here, we all know it's a pretty terrible system if you've got any chronic condition, and obviously it doesn't help you at all, and we end up with more drugs stacked on each other, and we end up in a lovely toxic state, and it's absolutely not a model for wellness and health. It's much more of a model for disease. So, but interestingly enough, back 100 years ago, the ideas of vitalism and homeopathy and energetic medicine, they were actually pretty strong. But the rise of the industrial chemical complex, and as soon as that got going, and very mechanistic science came along, much of this research was eradicated or ridiculed, and we've ended up with this extremely strong dominance of medical theory that's been based on chemistry. And there were great researchers, and obviously everyone's heard of Reif, and there was like Hammer, and there was Reich, and all sorts of researchers who have been driven out of the States, and mostly in the States they were driven out, or they were called insane, or they had their labs burnt, or they dropped their research. And obviously that really does stop quite a lot of people looking into it, all of the fear that was involved in that. And then another reason, I think, often in universities you can have a biology department, a chemistry department, a physics department. They don't necessarily, they don't very often do research projects together, and they're generally treated as separate disciplines, and especially physics, which is a great shame, because fundamentally chemistry and biology depend on physics. So today, every speaker today is going to make us put a different hat on. So we really look at the body from the point of view of physics. So the main message of this is, that often all of our research, all of our thinking has been to do with what we can see, and what we don't see has been put to the side. And physics you often can't see, but really we need to be thinking about what we can't see. So this is a nice, lovely quote from Albert St. Georgi, who's a Nobel Prize winning physiologist. Life is too rapid and subtle to be explained by slow moving chemical reactions and nerve impulses. And the question from this is, what on earth controls biology? And this is the question that Peter was always asking. Because, to him, or I'm sure to many of us here, I think I got this number wrong. I think it's 70 trillion, but I think the human body consists of 70 trillion cells, and each cell there's an incredible number of reactions per second taking place. And how on earth is all of that? How on earth is that being coordinated? And how are we managing to self-organize ourselves? Because it doesn't seem from the system of nerve impulses or chemical reactions that can be so. And when we go down the gene lines, I think with Watson and Crick, who discovered in 1953 the DNA, there's a huge amount of, I guess, huge amount of popularity in the thought that genes control biology. And then people started asking, you know, what controls the genes? And I think there was a theory put up about the master control gene, and then it was like, well, what controls the master control gene? And then I think more recently there's been a good rise over the past 10 or so years of the field of epigenetics, which is getting a lot of acceptance for the idea that the environment that the environment is controlling the genetic expression. So that's slightly changing, but it doesn't seem to me in normal biology that there's a particularly great, well, there's not a particularly great explanation for what controls biology. And if we just looked at the nervous system as an example, like the nervous system consists of nerves of different lengths, of different widths, of different sizes. It has completely different transmission speeds going down each nerve. It starts very wide down the spinal column and it gets thinner and thinner and thinner. So, and therefore the electromagnetic waves traveling down them and end up traveling at different speeds. And that's not a particularly great model for coordinating things. And I'm sure someone has done the maths somewhere for coordinating the movement, but it's not particularly great. And I think there's a good example in our film The Living Matrix. Actually, I think it was James Oshman who talked about it, but of baseball players. When they're hitting the ball, for them to hit the ball at the right spot and the right time to get the ball where they want to go, all of that's actually calculated and happened before the bat has ever left. Well, the bat has already left their stroke. It's almost like I say backwards in time, but it's completely, absolutely instantaneous, and there's not enough time for any of that to be calculated. So there's absolutely this quantum effect going on between the pitcher and the person who hits the bat, and it's definitely not explained through traditional speed mechanisms. And as we start to look at this, we can start to think of the body as perhaps something else. Is there perhaps a structure, or is there perhaps a network of information and energy that might be controlling some of these things? Is there a higher level organization system? Now, everyone here will be absolutely familiar with Einstein's equation, which is E equals mc squared, which tells us that matter and energy is equivalent. And it takes only a moment to realize that isn't quite enough. Well, it's not enough to describe or direct organization. And information is something that we use to describe the organization of energy, because if we didn't have it, everything would be chaos. None of us would be sitting here. We'd all be waves dancing around the universe in a pretty chaotic manner. So we need information to give us cohesion, to give us structure, to give us organization. So in a way, we can slightly extend Einstein's equation. It's not a mathematical equation. It's just a thought, really, to say that matter or reality is information-structured energy, or if you like, I think we had energy and information is life. So if we carry on with that thought, as ultimately energy and information, they're really the building blocks of life, and anything that we do to our body, including all therapies, and whether directly affect the patterns of energy in the body. And therefore, to achieve, if we're trying to look at health, or how on earth we achieve health, if we can correct and optimize the energy in your body, and if we can also correct the information that controls that energy and that directs that energy, we can get total wellness or health. So that's really what we're trying to do. And I think that's an absolute principle of naturopathy, that the body is a miraculous doctor if we give it the energy and information that it needs to heal itself. I mean, we all know about the placebo effect and the power of the body to heal itself. If we can get out of its way, or if we can support it in the right way, it will heal itself. It's it's not really some strong intervention. There's no chemical that gets the body better or anything. It's more if we can help optimize the energy in the body, if we can help give it the correct information, it will get better by itself. You know, almost every therapy is based on optimizing the body's own healing mechanism. Cool. So another way of looking at this is just to compare the body to a computer. My little phone's not working. That's right. So the human body, really, if you're looking at it as a computer, you can say that consists of three things. One is that it has software, and that's the information that controls the body. Two, a computer has an energy supply that is plugged into the wall. In the body, we can ask what those sources of energy are. I mean, one is food that we're all very familiar with, but there's also different forms of electromagnetic energy, such as light and grounding, etc. There's also gravity, so oxygenation, and then there's also water. And then we also have the hardware which is just the physical body. So it's just a nice way of looking at it. And so really, if we're looking at how on earth we can affect health, oh dear, that was a bad one. Play, cool. So this really is a lovely person sitting down, but it gives us a nice visual representation of how we can look at health and how we can get people better. And it for me it's done in order, and because you know the universe and life is fractal. And so we have information at the top, we have energy in the middle, and we have physiology, you know, along the bottom, along the legs. Now you can affect health through a number of ways, but sometimes if you can correct the information that's controlling your biology, and you can do that through biohacking and through physiology in a number of ways, but if you can correct that information, you have this catalyzing effect, or this sort of fractal effect where it affects everything else. Equally, we can optimize the energy in the body, like we can drink great water, you can go out in sunlight, you can do grounding, you can do things like that. And obviously, if we optimize the energy of your body, again, you have these great health effects. So I sort of break how you create health down into three ways. I think most of us are extraordinarily familiar with the ideas and physiology of how we can biohack that through diet, less perhaps through cold thermogenesis, going to hyperbaric oxygen, ozone, etc. But those are more known, how we can biohack our physiology. You can also jump that layer up into how you can optimize energy directly, and then you just then you literally just look at your oxygen, electromagnetism, water, etc., and diet, and pretty much nobody knows what we're talking about when we're talking about correcting information. But you can literally correct the information of your operating system directly, and that's the work that Peter Fraser did, which is the sort of what happened to me, or it's how I got better. So this is a lovely little picture that Sarah, who's sitting in the front row, is our head of research, found in New Scientist, I think last year. This is a picture of bacteria living off electrons, and just pure electrons. We all think every creature feeds on food or eats food, and we all think that the bacteria is feeding off food. Yet, if I get this right, if I remember, so it's researchers at, I can't pronounce it, but Aarhus University in Denmark, these are pictures of bacteria that were forming microbial nanowires which act as carriers of electrons it uses to feed itself. And there are a number of other universities around the world that also identified 10 other types of bacteria that just feed purely off electrons. And these are bacteria that live in the sea, they live in the earth outside. And if you want to literally just put it in Google, New Scientist bacteria living off electrons, and that article will give you the full details. And that's completely incredible. So we all think everything lives off some sort of food, yet there are creatures here on our planet, out in the earth outside, in the sea, just in the bay here, that are living off pure electrons. And that, I mean, I was blown away. I'm not surprised, but I was blown away because you don't often read that in New Scientist, because it sort of really backs these ideas, which is great. And in relation to that, our mitochondria, they originated from bacteria, and they're also an extraordinarily rich source of electrons. And traditionally, as I said, we're all led to believe that 100% of our energy comes from food, and most of that yet from carbohydrates. Yet the people who eat the most sugar are often, the people who eat the most sugar, who have the most amount of carbohydrates, are the least energetic. And it's no great secret that it's a terrible way to health, is to live off sugar, and sugar doesn't give you long-term energy. There's many examples, like birds are able to fly thousands of miles across the Atlantic without eating while migrating, and yet their body weight, it doesn't drop enough to, well, it hardly drops when you start calculating how much energy they expanded. Although Jerry gave us an example yesterday of how birds fly, so that might change my viewpoint, but I won't get into that now. And similar calculations can be made with long distance runners, and there's a great scientist called Gilbert Ling, and he noticed in some experiments that, well, he thought that only around, I think it was around 25% of the energy in a cell came from food and from the ATP route, and he couldn't, and he started asking questions. Well, where's the other 75% of the energy coming from? But when he started posing those questions, obviously it was pretty much ignored, because Western chemistry doesn't want us to think about that. They just want us to think that we only live off food, and yet today in New Scientist we can see there's bacteria that live off pure electrons. So the reason I'm talking about this is really because we want to look at the idea of cavities, and what on earth is the mechanism that might be happening in the mitochondria and our cells, of the other sources of energy. So this is borrowed from Jerry. It's Jerry's picture. So Jerry came up with the idea in his book of the fourth phase of water that mitochondria contain water that, I say this surrounded by fat, but he told me yesterday that the fat part isn't so important, which is great. But his fourth phase water basically acts as a mechanism to be a battery, in a sense, and this is just a picture sort of to explain it. But wherever you get a hydrophilic surface, you end up with a hexagonal structure, and what Jerry calls an easy layer, or the fourth phase of water. And this fourth phase of water is able to convert infrared light or other sources of energy into workable energy within the body, or in other words, it's able to create electrons and do other things, which is just absolutely amazing, really. This is just again a picture from his book that just shows how exposure to light increases the structure of water. Because on the left you've got a hydrophilic surface, and then the second slide down has had more light shined in, and it's built up a bigger EZ layer. Now this is just an interesting photo from our own company. I think it was about 6 or 7 years ago. Professor Emoto from Japan, who used to do all these experiments taking photos of crystals of water. We sent him off a sample of we sent him off a sample of an infosucical that we called Source Driver, which is basically designed to help the cell create more energy. And he sent these photos back, and and they had this hexagonal crystal structure to them. And to be honest, at the time, it didn't actually mean anything to us. It was just pretty. We were like, well, it's a nice pretty picture. We'll put it on the. I think we put it on the website. I'm sure we probably put it on the website. And it wasn't till last Friday, and I think we read Jerry's book last year, and actually I was attending one of our own trainings, and one of our trainers had this slide up, and I was like, oh my goodness, that sample we sent off 7 years ago and came back, it had this hexagonal shape. I'm not a scientist, so I'm not going to comment on what it means, but it's just interesting that it has a similar shape to that hexagonal structure, which is all good. Now this here is just a picture that shows how fats can act as a capacitor. The reason I'm saying this is when you're looking at a cell membrane, you've got water next to it with the EZ layer. It's converting energy from the environment into electrons, or a useful source of energy. At least some people think that fats around the cell act as a capacitor. The reason they think that is because each fat molecule, it has a hydrophilic head, and it also has a hydrophobic tail, and these tails go back to back. And if any of you know electronics, like when you have two plates on one side and something in the middle, you end up with a capacitor. And so the cellular membrane, it's just basically a way of being able to store energy, and combine that with the water in the inside. We have another mechanism for collecting and using energy that's outside of the normal carbohydrate sugar mechanism, which gets quite interesting. All of that bit, that's not my speciality. I'll go back to what we were doing with Peter. So when we're looking at the body field, and how on earth that can be generated, and what on earth it is. What we were really interested in at the time is the idea in physics of cavities. And if you have a guitar, or if you have a guitar and just a string by itself and string it, it doesn't make much of a noise. If you put a cavity behind it, it makes a much louder noise because you've got this resonant cavity effect. And the same is true in the body, which is just fascinating. Like, we've got cavities within cavities within cavities. You've got them at the very, very small level, as in the mitochondria. We've shown a possible way of a mechanism for mitochondria to attract and create energy. There's lots and lots of mitochondria sitting inside a cell. The cell, again, is another spherical shape. It's also a cavity, so it's able to tune that energy further. So you've got all the mitochondria together, sort of harmoniously singing and generating energy, and that's collecting like a bigger guitar. You've then got those cells sitting inside an organ, and in this example, I'm just going to look at the heart. Like, the heart has four chambers. Each of those 4 chambers, again, is a cavity. It's sitting within its overall cavity, the overall heart. The heart sits inside your chest cavity. And all of those overall, all those cavities within cavities within cavities, generate what we call the body field. And the heart is a particularly strong generator of the body field. It generates a very strong magnetic field. Also generates sound and phonons. But it isn't only the heart. I mean, the nervous system in generating all of its alpha and delta waves, and then even just a normal organ like a kidney or a liver, just because of that idea that we were talking about of the mitochondria being able to absorb energy from the outside and collect and store it and then retransmit it. I mean, every organ in your body basically acts as a cavity. It acts as a generator of the field or of your body field. And overall, I mean, we have 16 what we call 16 energetic drivers, but sort of 16 main organs that generate what we call the overall body field. And so, you know, you start to wonder, does nature know its physics? Why are there so many cavities? You know, we've got all of these electrical cavities in our brain, etc. Like our body is just full of cavities, but why? It's quite interesting. And not only that, we found also when we were doing all our matching experiments, and when we're saying matching experiments, we're talking about that old Vega device. Peter did all his research with a Vega device, and all you can say of a Vega device is that there's a correlation between one sample and another. You're not saying it is, but you're just saying there's some sort of communication between the two samples. But when we laid out all of these 16 energetic drivers, and we put them in a sequence, and you can basically do matching experiments to say, does the heart become before the nervous system, or does the nervous system go before the heart? I.e., is there a particular sequence that the body prefers? When we put it in the order that the body preferred, that order was exactly the same as the fetal development in the womb, and which was pretty fascinating to us. And another sort of interesting thing is when we're looking at all of the body organs and systems, you know, there are many types of sort of energetic activity that we're talking about. You know, some is physical, some is cellular, some is chemical, you know, some is photonic, some is from sound. So it's all different types. Let's go to the next one. So the energetic drivers, they're really what generate the body field. But the other question that's interesting is how is that energy organized? You know, how is it directed in the body? And that's what we call the energetic integrators. So these are really their preferred pathways for how information and energy flow in the body. And they're also the basic, I mean, in short, they're completely essential, the energetic integrators. And they're sort of similar to the Chinese meridian system, but as we were talking about earlier, they're not actually the Chinese meridian system. They're broader than it, and you can really see them as sort of preferred channels of how information and energy travel in the body. But really, the key point that comes out of the body field theory is there's another control mechanism, and information and energy. You know, if not more important, there's equally as important as the biochemical type of control systems. And when you look at this overall, I think as we mentioned before, there's really only 3 ways that you can influence. I say that you can influence health, and they are, you know, how to optimize the energy in the body, how to correct the information in the body, and also how you can biohack your physiology. So we'll just have a look at some of the few ways of how you can charge the body outside of that. One is grounding. I'm sure everyone's familiar with that. It's just a simple idea of taking your shoes off and, you know, walking on the ground. The way I love doing it, I just love going kiteboarding in the sea. But the sea is like, I think it's sort of like I call it's supercharged grounding. But, you know, if you get into salt water in the ocean, you ground so quickly, it's unbelievable. I don't think there's any more effective way than doing that, and you can make it fun. I think a lot of us in health, like, we do these, and often we think, oh, well, I should be doing that, or we take our shoes off as some routine or something. But I always think the best way of getting healthy is make it fun. Just build it into outdoor activities that you really enjoy doing. Because a lot of these grounding shoes are not very comfortable. He's got very funny eyes. I'm not sure I like his eyes. Do you photosynthesize? I'm sure that is probably fairly transparent to most of us. We are living creatures, and we're very, Jack was saying it on the video last night. He was saying, why is a mammal, why are we different to plants? Like we all photosynthesize, but the thing with plants is their roots are permanently in the ground, they're permanently in the sun. Like they're permanently connected. They're permanently connected to a rich source of electrons, a rich source of photons. Us human beings, one of the reasons we need food, and like a tree doesn't need food. It's quite happy living off electrons, water, and some minerals and the sunlight. One of the reasons we need food is because we're disconnected from the earth. However, although we're disconnected from the earth, we do still photosynthesize. We are still living off this energy, and it's a very it's a much easier, simpler way of getting healthier. That we don't, rather than think food. We all think food all day long. Just get outside. Or actually, it was another Jack statement. What does he say? He said, "Are you sleeping naked on the ground every day?" So get naked. Go skinny dip kiteboarding. It's one of my fantasies. I haven't done it yet, but I'll probably get arrested. Is Vancouver all right on the nudist thing? Yeah, it's all right. Okay, cool. I know in the States you're not meant to be naked. Like Europe, you can do anything, but not in the States. And this is another way of how we can recharge is through magnetism. Our cells. I mean, this is another Jack statement, but our cells recharge themselves at night with the Earth's magnetic field, and our cells recharge and condense slightly at night via the Earth's magnetic field, and the light in the daytime releases that energy. There's some areas in the world that are much weaker in magnetic fields. I think in Canada or up in North Canada, I think it's a bit weaker in magnetic fields. There's areas down in Mexico and the Caribbean, or my favorite, I think one of the most magnetic spots in the world is this little island in the Mediterranean. If anyone hasn't been there, go there. It's called Ibiza, and it's the world's party rave center. And Sarah and me went there last summer, and we're very innocent. We only drank water, but we had far more energy than all these teenage boppers on whatever they do. But yeah, I mean, we were only sleeping a few hours a day and dancing all night, and actually we were working on our new movie Supercharged, and working out the scripts and who we were going to film and all that type of stuff. Again, like you can make life fun, and you can get help. You can get healthy in fun places. You can work in healthy places. I think that's really important to do that. Yeah, I mean, another way you can use. Has everyone heard of PMF, which is like pulsed electromagnetic therapy? I think it was in the early 80s. So researchers called Brighton and Bassett. They demonstrated that fractures could be stimulated to heal using PMF therapy. And they noticed that it can basically jumpstart the healing of a fracture, and even ones that had failed to heal for as long as 40 years. And there's quite a lot of information out there about PMF therapy. Well, we're in a great place for this. I don't know where that is. That looks a bit New Zealand-like. Where is it? Who knows? But yeah, fresh air, lots of mountains. Up in the mountains we have very highly ionized air. So it's just a great way of becoming supercharged. It's just a thing of, how on earth can we change our body's control system? Sorry, I'm going slightly too fast. I mean, we talked a bit about infoceuticals, but really, where that word came from, it's an information ceutical. So it's like a software patch for the body. You can basically imprint, but it's very similar to the idea in homeopathy. I mean, a homeopathic is an infoceutical. The only thing with homeopathy, obviously Hahnemann came up with it 200 years ago, and 200 years ago it was relatively effective, but only relatively. I think the difference between Hahnemann's between Hahnemann's time and today's time is we've now got another 100,000 chemicals on the planet, if not probably more than that, and our bodies have got much more toxic and complicated. So it hasn't become as effective, but really the difference between Hahnemann and informational healthcare, or sort of the infoceuticals of the future, is how I would call them. Today we can look at the information of how the body should be when it's working optimally or properly, instead of using a dilute substance of something that's like for like. So we can direct the body to how it should be, rather than try and get a sort of a homeopathic reaction. And obviously there's all sorts of sources of information. I mean, thought itself is information, and I keep saying, like, make life fun. I think it's an incredibly important thing in how we heal people, is people's choices of even educating or steering them in self-help directions, so they can end up with healthy thoughts and have fun. I think fun is just a great thing. Obviously, fresh, vibrant food is a source of good information. Flipping sides again. Obviously, education is another source of information. I mean, the other ways of helping us get healthy are through hacking our physiology. I quite like this idea of increasing your metabolic flexibility. I think sometimes we can get, or we can read a book, and you're meant to do your coffee, or you're meant to fast, or you're meant to do a juicing vegan diet, or you're meant to do a fat diet. I mean, I've done a number of these. I mean, I've tried all sorts of these things for many months at a time to see what happens, and you always get all these really interesting effects, especially during the first few weeks and months. Personally, I sort of see it more as a training mechanism. You can use a fat-based diet to turn off your addiction to sugar, and you can turn on those pathways for burning fat, and then you can go on to a more balanced diet and have other carbohydrates and stuff. But I think it's really healthy to actually just push your body in many different directions. Go and do cold thermogenesis, really cold things. Go and do heat. Go and do have fat-based diets. Do some interval. Do some intermittent fasting. Do a load of weights sometimes. Do your sprints. Like if you vary up what you do, your body ends up much more flexible. And for me, it's been a sort of secret to. I mean, Peter helped get me healthy and get me well out of a very serious state 10, 11 years ago. But what's helped me more recently in sort of pushing that further is just increasing the spectrum of, basically just pushing my body in different in different directions. And I was following Jack's cold thermogenesis stuff for a number of times last year, and I pushed it quite hard in a few times, and I'd get lovely little flus for a few hours and feel quite grim, just freezing myself off. But then the next day I do end up feeling fine, and now I'm pretty incredible. So it's all good. It's all good. Cool. This is just Yeah, so I mean, I guess the message I'd like to leave us all with is really that we can think of ourselves and all of our cells in our body and our environment as really a giant information and energy machine, as is the universe as a whole. But it goes all the way up into the universe, to our body, down into our cells, and I'm sure below that. So, a way of becoming supercharged, which is the name of our new movie. You can basically correct your information, optimize your energy, and that's how you get supercharged. I might have one more slide. I think I've got one. It's the thank you slide, which is the easy one. I think Sarah asked me to promise. I think last night. So if any of you would like to watch The Living Matrix for free, and there's also a number of Peter's papers if you want to read those. Yeah, if you go to the nesthealth.com website and just put your email address in there, we'll make sure. And if you put Boucher Institute, Boucher, sorry, I'm really bad at saying anything. Then we'll email you back a link to a copy of the Living Matrix, so you can see that film, which is great. Cool. Well, anyway, well, thank you very much for having me. That's great. Oh, questions? Sure. I was trying to sneak off about questions. Does anyone have any questions? And there's also Sarah, our head of research. We can both answer questions.
Yeah, that's lovely. Kevin was over here 25 years ago teaching us this stuff and translating all the German acupuncture. Germany's full of all this stuff. I don't think the Brits really want to talk to it too much. But, yeah, I mean, it's wonderful that we're putting all this stuff out now more and more. The question is, I notice you are holding that mobile all the time. What do you think about?
Nobody can hear what you're saying. We need to
Oh,
hear.
okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. Julian Kenyon was over here 30 years ago, or 25 years ago, teaching us this, and we appreciate that now we're putting it out to the public much more. But the question was the mobile, the cell phone. Can you comment on how much that could you seem
sure.
You seem to hang on to it all the time. Is that a disruption to your energetic system?
I mean, when I'm back in Santa Cruz, I live in the redwoods on the top of a hill, and I never use my cell phone. I always use a landline. So you've always got the. I mean, we also live in modern society. I mean, for me, as much as possible, I would absolutely recommend not to use your cell phone. But, there's practical trade-offs. Like obviously today, giving a presentation, I want to be able to give the best one I can, and the only way is the notes, and that's how I flick the slides. But no, I mean you're absolutely right.
Thank you.
Here you go, Jerry. When you talk about the energy field, can you say something about what is this a kind of electromagnetic kind of field? And if so, what frequencies are involved? Do you know, or is it?
Sure. I mean, it's basically a full range. It's a full. Sorry. When we talk about the body field, we're talking about the full range of energy emissions from the body. So if we go back to the example of the heart, I mean, the heart is pushing out a strong magnetic field, but it's also producing sound and phonons. So there's somnoluminescence effects of sound going through liquid, pushing out photons. When we're looking at the nervous system, that's obviously with alpha and delta waves. If we're looking in the mitochondria, it's more your type of mechanism. I mean, we would sort of define the body field as all of those forms of energy right across the board. Yeah.
Harry, a point I want to make, because you made it, the hexagonal structure, it's a big deal. This whole conference is about physics. Everybody in this room may not know this, but the hexagonal structure, especially of water, has been worked on by a guy named Martin Chaplin. Write his name down because you need to read a little bit about it. It has to do with the density of water. And when I talk later today, you're going to find out that the density of water is a really important thing. So that atomic structure is a big deal. But what I want to direct your attention to is NASA flew the Cassini mission on the south pole of Saturn. They found a hexagonal magnetic field. And no one's been able to figure out why. Well, I'm going to tell you the reason why Emoto found what he found. This is a magnetic effect. And it's an action in you right now. The gentleman's question in the front about electromagnetic radiation, about cell phones. You can do a biohack. Cell phones suck, okay? All these laptops, see all these kids here with laptops? They're destroying their testosterone. They're destroying their progesterone. They're destroying all of their estrogen without them knowing it. But when I get finished this afternoon, they're going to find out why, okay? Here's the biohack for you. When you take your cell phone or your laptop and you go in a plane 39,000 feet, what happens? The battery runs out faster. Why is that? When you disconnect for the Earth, you know what happens? You're facing more cosmic radiation. Has higher energies, that's in the EMF spectrum. So your laptop does the same thing as you. And you can do this hack yourself. So when you realize that the electronics that you have on your lap work by the same physical laws of physics, you are doing the same thing. So if you live in Vancouver on the 10th floor of an apartment, you've got a problem. You're designed to be connected. And anybody who laughed, trust me, after this afternoon, you will not be laughing. This is dead serious. The laws of physics are universal, okay? That means they're not subject to our biology or our beliefs. E equals MC squared is the rule of law in this room, in New Orleans, in Vancouver, everywhere in Canada. And that's a key point. Everything in your lap runs the same way. Those devices also happen to emit another problem called blue light that has a very specific effect that's going to be tied to Jerry's talk and to my talk. Because the battery of life requires what Jerry's going to talk about and what I'm going to talk about. So realize these things are all connected. Martin Chaplin, Cassini space mission, the South Pole of Saturn. Look at it. You'll see a hexagonal structure that nobody in science can figure out. But it's a big deal for water.
Cool.
Elaborate what you mean by quantum diet, an electron diet.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I didn't go into that slide, did I? Basically, basically, it was the idea of looking of what things in a diet might help the body use these other sources of energy. So, I mean, Jack, I'm sure will talk about this afternoon. So it was the idea of eating lots of fish and oysters for increasing DHA around your membrane, so that it can act as a better capacitor and ideas like that. And also, yeah. Cool. Has anyone got another question? Sure. How the negative ions work? Well, I mean, basically, it's a very rich source of electrons. So, I mean, it's a similar idea in grounding, but you can get it from grounding, and electrons are absorbed through your body. You can breathe in negative ions, or you can breathe in electrons through the air, being in mountainous air, or having very strong ionizers. But I mean, it's all a similar source, but basically getting a rich source of electrons into your body. Cool. I mean, yeah, there's one thing I forgot to mention. I mean, we have also got a booth in the other room, so you can also have a look at your body field, or see the unseen on the computer screen over there. Cool. All right. Thank you.